Tell me real quickly, you're a veteran. How does that, your mindset apply to what you're doing right now?
Being a veteran and doing what I'm doing now, it kind of comes from the mindset that you have as a veteran. It's the mission. You may not know what to do, how to do it, but you know it's got to get done. And the same thing applies here. When I first decided I wanted to start investing in houses and flipping, I didn't know jack. Man, I mean, construction wise, on the construction side, I think I'd helped my dad build a couple of barns and lots of fences for our horses. But beyond that, no, my wife had more experience on the construction side with her family than I did.
Hey, it's Tim Miller. After spending 2 decades as a photojournalist in the Navy Reserve, capturing and sharing incredible stories, I've harnessed my passion for storytelling for something truly cool. Join us as we interview amazing entrepreneurs, including veterans, while sharing captivating stories and having a great time along the way.
Okay, James, tell me about what you do. What's in the big picture? What industries are you in? And
At the moment, I'm a real estate agent. I'm managing partner of our own brokerage. It's a family run, veteran owned business. We got into this space kind of interesting. Really, my professional career, I really spent in education. I started off as, like most people, I started off as a teacher and a coach. Went into administration, assistant high school principal, assistant middle school principal, so forth on the line. And eventually, when I retired, I was director of maintenance and operations at the central office level. So, but about 6 years ago, my wife and I started getting on the investor side, right? So my brother had been a real estate agent working for a different brokerage. And so I was depending on him to pull my comps, to do my comparisons and stuff when I'd find property that I wanted to figure out whether it's worth investing or not. So I would say, hey, I want to check out this property. Okay, I'll get to it in the morning. I'm like, dude, the only time I got to work is in the evening. I've worked during the day just like you. So come on, I need this tonight. And he's like, I'll get it in the morning. So after a year, I told my wife, I said, I'm tired of waiting on my brother to pull my comps. I'm going to go get my license. And never intended to do anything other than just have a small brokerage that we moved our own investment properties through. And then I retired from the school district 2 years ago. Well, 2 years ago, last May. And I was sitting there and got in the fall and twiddling my thumbs a little bit. I was in between projects and I'm kind of going, now what? And so I called my brother. I said, why can't we have other agents work for us? He said, we can. Why not? I said, okay, how do we do that? He said, I don't know. I've never done that before. Like, you're the broker. You're supposed to know these things.
nice.
And so anyway, so we've kind of been trying to go through a growth. So that's really been what's going on for the last 2 years on that side, is me focusing on the brokerage side, trying to add agents and grow the business that way, but still doing our investing, our flipping. Our long-term plan is really rental property. Um, but mostly what we've been doing at this moment in time is we've been doing flips. We have two right now that we're currently rehabbing in Boyd. And so we're hoping those will be our first two holdings. But it's been I don't know, it's been a great adventure. I love it. I get up in the morning excited about what I do, and getting to research. And of course, one of the things I've always loved, I've got a business background. My degree is actually business, and I was in sales before I ever got into education. I love the negotiation part of it. Um, so that's kind of my thing. Was one of the things but right now what I do, I work on our properties, our projects, and then I work with my agents to make sure that they have the most opportunity for success.
Gotcha. All right, James, tell me what do you love about flipping the most, or what do you hate about it the most?
You know, it's interesting because on flips, it's a little different process, but I love the front end. There's several different parts I love, but I love the front end, finding the property, doing the math, because I was a math teacher, um, figuring out the numbers, and then the negotiation part. That's really one of my favorites, which is funny because it works pretty well in my relationship with my wife because she hates that part of it. She loves finding the house. She doesn't want to crank the numbers out, but she loves finding them. But I love the negotiation part of it. So it's one of my absolute favorites of that process. And then obviously taking something from terrible to amazing and seeing that, being involved with that transformation, is pretty awesome.
Right.
We have a philosophy where we approach the houses that we usually take the worst of the worst in that neighborhood and make it the best.
Great.
So we add value to the house, we add value to the neighborhood, or at least that's our tip, our goal. And even we would take it one step further. We try to be good neighbors while we're there, reaching out and trying to get to know the people that live around us. And it has paid us a lot of dividends. Prime example, I had a house over in West Fort Worth that we were flipping. Wasn't a bad neighborhood, but around it wasn't the best. And I got a call about 6 o'clock in the morning from my neighbor, basically saying somebody was stealing some of our materials that were sitting in the front yard. So it has paid us dividends like that, getting those phone calls when somebody's messing with the house or whatever. So it's, again, we try to add value that way, both that, like I said, either with the house and the neighborhood and to our neighbors.
You're a veteran. How does that, your mindset apply to what you're doing right now?
Being a veteran and doing what I'm doing now, it kind of comes from the mindset that you have as a veteran. It's the mission. You may not know what to do, how to do it, but you know it's got to get done. And the same thing applies here. When I first decided I wanted to start investing in houses and flipping, I didn't know jack. Man, I mean, construction wise, on the construction side, I think I'd helped my dad build a couple of barns and lots of fences for our horses. But beyond that, no, my wife had more experience on the construction side with her family than I did. I think that's it. It's just knowing that this thing has to get done and you got to do whatever it takes to get it done. So I really think that grit, if you will, that kind of mindset that this has to be done. It doesn't really matter how long it takes, what you got to do to figure it out. I got that from the military, from the Army. So it's just paid dividends in this particular arena.
Awesome. The pros and cons of a fixer-upper.
Obviously, it's my preference as an investor. What I would tell anybody looking at evaluating whether it's a fixer-upper, whether it's new construction or whether it's a pre-owned home, for me, the remodel, the fixer-upper allows you to take something that's way below market, way below pricing, add value to it. Like, for instance, the ones we're doing right now, we're adding bathrooms. They were 3-1s. Well, one was a 2-1, but these houses will now be 3-2s. So we've added value and we haven't added any kind of square feet, which will add value on the price side on when we get our appraisal. So you get value there. So you get instant, once you're complete, you get instant appreciation and you get instant equity in the house because you basically paid maybe 50 cents on the dollar. And now you're getting full value of the dollar, or at least the house will have that value. So to me, that's really the pro of it. The con is that obviously it's going to take some work, and either you've got to have a really good contractor and know that contractor in very well, or you got to do the work yourself, which is going to take a little bit longer, but it's not impossible.
Right.
So to me, that's really the pros and cons of a remodel or a flip.
How about new construction?
New construction is cool because somebody else is doing all the hard work and labor.
Sure.
You just get to pick the cool things. Hey, I want that tile. I want this, I want that shutter. I want this and I want that. And let's do this flooring and stuff. So that's kind of cool, which is the pro part because you're not doing any of the heavy lifting and you just get to pick all the cool things. But the con is the length of time it takes. It's a much longer process to build a brand new home from scratch. And there's a lot more things that are going to be involved with that process because you have a ton of what most people don't realize is that when you're building new construction, it has to meet with lots of inspections.
Right.
And anything, weather's going to delay it. The city inspector may not like what your contractor did. So now it's got to get redone. Those things are applicable too on flips, but not as much as because every single thing that you're doing on a new construction has to be inspected by the city inspector.
Gotcha. Well, pre-owned, you're just buying a house from an existing.
Yes. Where with the pre-owned home, what you're really talking about is a house that's already kind of in great shape. Maybe you might want to change a paint color, something like that. But you're probably, especially in our market right now, you're paying right at market rates. In other words, if it's worth $200,000, you're probably going to pay $200,000. Of course, a year ago, if it was worth $200,000, you might be paying $250,000, $275,000 because the market was just so hyper hot. But you're getting a house that's already ready, move in ready. You can move in. Maybe you want to tweak it in the sense of, oh, hey, I want to change this fan. I want to change this paint color, but you get to move in immediately. And that's the big pro for pre-owned.
Okay. So can you go through the phases of buying a home just from beginning to end?
Of course. For a typical home buyer, really the first thing is kind of getting your finances in order, which kind of entails a couple different things. But most importantly, you want to walk in pre-qualified. So you need to start working with the mortgage lender or a broker to get all those things put together so you can get pre-qualified.
And this is way before you go searching for a home, right?
Absolutely, way before. If you've kind of got your finances in order and stuff, maybe not way before, but it is definitely the first thing you want to do. You want to get that, because when you walked in as a pre-qualified buyer, your offer will have so much more power than if you've got to go through that process. And honestly, in our market right now, if you're not walking in pre-qualified, you're not even going to get a shot at a house. So, but once you get those things all done, then you need to go find you an agent. And finding an agent, I jokingly say, I think everybody, it's that 6 degrees of separation. I think everybody knows at least 6 to 10 real estate agents.
Sure.
The other joke is that everybody seems to think they can sell real estate, which I do not agree, but that's okay. That's just my opinion. But you got to find an agent that really fits you, that fits your personality, that will be attentive to your needs. Then once you do that, you give them the criteria that you want to go find, then you let them go work. You let them do their job, which is what they're paid for, because you're paying them for their market knowledge, their understanding of the process, and how to find and make sure you're getting the best value for the house. Right? Once that happens, you fall in love, you walk 1 to however many it takes, you find the house you love, you make an offer. That's really where the agent comes in. It's one of the big things that agent's going to do for you. In that process, he gets to negotiate for you. You tell him what you want. He's there to serve you, to provide, to basically be the guy you want negotiating. In other words, I want ABC. His job is to make sure you're getting ABC. Then once the offer is accepted, then it's just a matter of prepping for closing. It's usually, typically depending on the situation, it's usually about 30 days. Once you close a contract, as long as there's no big time problems, you're going to close within about 30 days, 30 to 45 days. It depends on, a lot of that's really dependent on title and dependent on your mortgage company. But after that, then you close, and then you walk into your happy new home all excited to get to experience it.
Nice. So now in selling a home, tell me about the importance of finding the right agent. It's all about relationships, right?
It is. And this business is absolutely about relationships. So I think there's got to be a connection there between the seller and that agent. But I think you also need to find somebody that's very strong in their market knowledge, how to, market of the house where it's at, but also how to market the home, because anybody can write anything to go into MLS, but it's wording things to where they pop, knowing the right price point to basically get the best coverage or get the best interest to get the most showings. It's having that knowledge and experience, because there's lots of ways to strategize on your price point that you want to sell, but what works best in that market. And that's really where that agent kicks in. I mean, his knowledge or her knowledge is phenomenal if you've got the right one.
Right. Now, as a seller, like just preparing your home.
We just got through doing this. I've got a brand new agent who just got her first listing. Well, actually 2. Within a week of getting her license and activated, she got her first 2 listings. So the first one we went and walked, and I'm helping her through this whole process. First one was all set up. It was decluttered. There wasn't nothing exceptionally personalized in the house. Very put together, ready to show. The other house would show very well, but there was a lot of personalized items, family pictures, things of that nature. Now, again, both of these super well clean, straight. There really wasn't any clutter that needed to be done, but you're really trying to set that house up to where anybody walking in can visualize themselves living there. So if I've got my granddaughter's picture up on the wall, then it's really my house, and it may make it challenging for the potential buyer to visualize them being in that house. So you've kind of got to take some
Right.
of those personal things down.
Room by room.
Room by room, absolutely. Room by room. It's not just the main areas. You've got to hit, and we did this in every one of the bedrooms and the halls and everything. But you also, a lot of times what we find is the house needs to be decluttered. Not so much the closets per se, because it is a lived in home. Obviously, somebody's living there. But you can't have stuff junked up on top of a desk or up on top of a dresser or stuff like that. It needs to be neat and orderly, because what it does, same thing on that, making sure your grass and little things like that. That was the one thing on this other showing that we had to do. We had to get them, before we could start listening, we had to get them to clean their flower beds, because it had weeds and 4-foot tall grass, and
Sure.
it's not going to, it doesn't have any curb appeal. And you've got to, the philosophy is, or the mentality will be, well, if they don't take care of that, what else in that house are they not taking care of?
Right.
So it's little things like that that just make a difference in getting it ready to show.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and this is something that not people just don't know about. They expect the real estate agent to know more about it, but the whole listing thing, the MLS, the system, talk about that a little bit.
That's where that relationship with the agent comes in. Talking to you and finding out everything about that house. Because what you're doing is you're relying on them to present that and post that in MLS that optimizes and says, hey, come look at me. You need to see me. I am the house for you. And that's what you need to do. But that really, to be able to convey that relationship between the agent and the seller has to be pretty good, to where you can communicate well enough to get all the details. Who's the best person that knows that house in and out? And that's the seller. And so we jokingly say, okay, brag on the house. Tell us all about it.
Sure.
Brag on it. So that way, the more we know and we hear that passion about the house, the more we can, I'm losing my words here, but basically put that into that same love of the house into that listing. It's not an overly complicated system. You know, basically you go in there and there's some specifics that have to be put in there, room sizes, things of that nature. And then we normally would set up through one of the showing services. So that way it gets booked online.
Right.
And then we set that up to where the client gets a notification. Anytime there's a showing, they'll get notification too. So that way they're keeping informed when those showings are happening. And sometimes, you know, clients have, okay, I can't have anybody showing looking at the house after 8 p.m. We can put those limitations inside there too.
Right.
We put the electronic door boxes that keep the keys. That keeps us being able to track who's coming in and out of the house. It also restricts who can come in and out of that house.
Sure.
Because you want to know who is, and you also want to make sure that it's only the agents with their clients.
Gotcha.
Versus if you use a lockbox or something like that, then anybody, once they get that code, can get in that house.
Right. So tell me about photos inside the MLS. Who handles photos? How does that work?
And technically, let's say you had this house, it was already listed once, and the previous agent took pictures. You're really not supposed to use those pictures, because they're not yours and they're not your clients. So it gets interesting. It's an interesting question. So what we do, we make sure that we take our own photos, or unless the client has photos too. But again, we're looking for certain things. When we're taking a picture, we're trying to maximize the way the room looks, making sure, like in a bedroom, I try to make sure we've got a door and a window.
Gotcha.
Ceiling and the floor.
Right.
So we're looking for very specific things. It's not, now, if you really want to take it to the next level, there's lots of photographers that do professional real estate photography that do an amazing job.
What's the value of having a professional photographer coming? Is there a monetary value where you say, you know what, it's not worth it to have somebody spend whatever, $500 or whatever?
I think for me, it comes back to the price point of the house. If you've got a, say, $225,000 home, I don't know that you need to go spend $600 or $700 to get a photographer.
Gotcha.
Because again, it's an entry level home. But you're talking about, like, I just had a house over in Dallas that I just got through selling. I paid the photographer to come in, and then they added some value to me, because in addition to the pictures, I also paid for them, and they built a floor plan based on the measurements of the house. So all of that stuff I was able to upload into MLS. So those
Right.
listing agents, or not the listing agent, but the buying agents, before they even go look at the house, they got a great feel for the way the house is laid out and how it really looks. And they did a great job.
Mm,
And you can take it to another level. I mean, even beyond that, they'll develop a virtual tour for you.
sure.
So there's lots of opportunities there, but I think that comes back to the price point of the house. If you're talking in this particular house, we were talking about $350,000 home, but it was also a very good friend of mine. And I wanted to make sure that we maximized the dollar. So I was willing to pony up and I paid for it and, got it taken care of. And his house had no problem turning it. And
Right.
we knew we weren't going to have a problem because where it was at in the market relative to the local pricing.
Right.
So, but no, there's some great opportunities there. But again, I think it's going to come back to the value of the home.
Okay. Tell me about offers a little bit. Reviewing offers and settling on one and going through that process.
A lot of times clients will want to come in and say, look, I don't want to even talk to anybody that's below this dollar amount or something like that. Agents are obligated to present all offers. Doesn't matter who it came from, how much it is, they have to present it. It is,
I didn't know that.
yes, they have to. It's in the TREC guidelines, and I think it's even maybe some state guidelines too. But so it's funny because well, I'm not going to say every single time, but we'll get clients and okay, I don't want to entertain anything below 300K. I said, okay, I got you. I hear you. I've still got to present it to you. Then you can tell me no, and I'll turn around and decline it for you. So, but offers there's lots of different ways to look at the offers because not all offers are the same. They may come in and have the same price point. Let's say they each were offering you $350,000, but one is doing a 1% earnest, $100 for an option period. They want 10 days and it's, let's say VA financing. Another one might be FHA financing, but they're coming in with $10,000 in earnest. And
Gotcha.
they're going to put $500 down in option fees. So just because the price of the house may be all consistent, the rest of that offer is critical because they're not all the same. If you look at what it takes to close a VA loan versus what it takes to close an FHA loan or even a cash offer, they're two different animals and some of those take longer than the other. So that's again, where you're paying that agent his knowledge and he can make sure you understand the value of this offer, value of that offer, and the value of that offer. And then he can also run you what's called a net sheet. So once he knows how much money if you have a mortgage, he can run you a net sheet to show you exactly what you'd be pocketing after close based on each of those offers.
Tell me about open houses.
It's funny. Everybody wants to do it, but only actually 1% of all home sales, or at least this is my understanding of the situation. 1% of all home sales sell through a home show, open house. 1%. So
it's a waste of time, basically.
well, no, I don't want to say that because so here what it is still a good marketing piece because what you do, if you've done it right, you've talked to all the neighbors, and who better to help you find other people to buy the house than the neighbors. They want to know who's moving in next to them.
Right.
And hey, I don't want just anybody. I want Becky to move in there over here. Right. So that's what you do. That's really what an open house does. It kind of announces to the rest of the neighborhood, hey, this is open. Come check this out. And if you've done your job right in marketing, we do what's called a 5x5. Which basically means my agents are going 5 houses to the left, 5 houses to the right, 5 houses across the street, and 5 houses behind the house. And they're taking flyers and announcing the open house. Then we also make sure that we list it in MLS on the Tuesday prior to that weekend prior to. So that way we maximize the coverage in the MLS. And by doing that, you help. Now, as far as the open house, is there a strong chance you're going to sell through there? Not necessarily, but it doesn't mean it can't happen either. So, but it is a great marketing tool.
Gotcha. All right. Tell me about selling for sale by owner versus having an agent.
Well, I think that gets really the question becomes back to the agent. And usually my experience basically says they don't necessarily want to pay an agent for his time.
Right.
I get that. no, I mean, especially today with the way the world is, I mean, it's costing you $10 billion for a gallon of milk. So I get that. But what you're losing there is you, as the seller, one, you're not always the most objective about your house with regards to
Sure.
what its value is. You really are going to struggle at times, not impossible, but struggle to come up with a fair competitive market analysis. That agent can knock that out in a heartbeat if they have even halfway know what they're doing.
Right.
But that agent knows that market. That's the critical piece here. And they know how to sell it. They know what to
Gotcha.
do. They understand the paperwork. I've got a prime example right now. I'm working with an investor out of Mexico. And even though him and his wife work at a law firm in Mexico, this is a for sale by owner, so it's a little bit, it kind of falls in this category, but we're involved in it because honestly, they're not going to necessarily know out of Mexico all the paperwork that's required to get that to close and close correctly, and to make sure that they're not taken advantage of. If they have any remediation that needs to be done, they're not going to be able to navigate that. But that agent understands that.
Right.
And so, and this had an interesting nuance because it's a condo and an HOA. So it creates some additional nuances to the sale. But that's why you're paying that agent, because he understands that and he knows that.
Right. Do I need an agent? And you kind of answered that question. Yeah, you really do need an agent.
I believe you do. I think they're going to always work in your best interest.
Sure.
Always. It doesn't really matter. They're not supposed to be. They have a fiduciary responsibility. And I know my agents and I and my brother, my broker, take this to heart. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our clients. It's not what we want. It's not the way we want it. It's not even how much we're going to make. That's the priority. It's the client's needs that come first. And that's really the value and benefit, one of the many values, I should say, of having an agent.
And how much does a realtor get paid?
Okay, a little funny story. I don't know how much I should get into this. My brother probably killed me doing this. So last night we were talking a little bit about this particular subject matter. And I brought up that, we were about to discuss that today. He's like, oh, no, you can't talk about that. I'm like, I understand. And here's the answer to the question. There is no set fee for an agent, for a realtor. It's actually always negotiated between the realtor and the client. So there's not an absolute.
I've always heard it was a certain percentage of whatever the sale was.
It is whatever that agent and that client decide.
I did not know that.
Yes.
So,
well, think about, there's a lot of agencies out there now that are doing flat fees. So it's nowhere has it ever been written it's a certain percentage.
interesting.
It's always been a negotiated piece. So it is what it is. Now, obviously, realtors probably have what they feel like their value is. But on the other side of this, it comes back down to whatever that client and that realtor agree on. That's what they get paid for.
Amazing. What's the best property to buy for an investment home?
It's a great question, but there's no absolute answer here.
Gotcha.
Because it's really going to come back to the investor and their comfort zone. If it's a beginner investor, I'm going to tell you, you need to look at single family, or you need to look at, if you want to look at some multifamily, nothing more than say a duplex or a fourplex. It also is going to come back to your cash position. A guy was sitting with $50,000 in cash can do one thing, but a guy sitting with $300,000 can do a whole different thing.
Right.
But I think it's going to come back to the investor, what they want to accomplish, but also because they all have values. Multifamily, apartments, single family, all have values and impact things differently. But it really comes back to the comfort of the investor, where they're at, their experience, their knowledge, and how much money they've got to spend.
What do you say to people who want to get into the flipping industry? You see all these shows on TV, and that's just really...
They make it look so easy, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
They do. And that's why they have such production value behind the scene, or behind the camera, I should say. I approach things a little bit differently. I get calls, hey, James, hey, I've got a friend who's interested in this. Or I've even had one of my electricians say, hey, I got a buddy and I want to learn how to do what you do. Well, coming from the education, in education, you always share. If you have the latest, greatest way to convince a kid to understand, learn, and retain
Sure.
information, you share that. Now, there's a lot of people in this industry that are like, no, I'm not going to create another competitor. I'm not going to sit there and give you, my trade secrets.
Right.
It's just not the way I approach it. If I didn't know anything when I started, if it wasn't for a couple, 3 people that kind of helped advise me openly, willingly, I would probably still sitting there trying to find my first flip. But I just think you gotta do your research. You need to do your study. Because that was the other thing we did. When the process of trying to get our monies together, our funds together, we also spent a year studying. I was doing things to kind of improve our cash position, but I also was doing a lot. I was going to classes. I was listening to podcasts, reading books, trying to get, if you will, better at my craft.
Hmm.
On the coaching side, we always talk about being a student of the game. And then talking to people, asking questions. Again, you'll find people that if you can't bring them some kind of value, they're not going to talk to you.
Sure.
But I just love what I do. So when I get approached, I love sharing. So for me, I don't really worry about if you're going to take my secret sauce, because if you take my secret sauce and do it better than me, then man, more power to you.
Sure.
But I just,
It's a big world.
Here's the one thing I say consistently when it comes to investors. I believe, at least specifically in rental properties per se, not so much on the flip side, but the rental properties is the single best way to develop generational wealth. And I wish I could take credit for that statement. I can't. I obviously learned that from probably about 6
Sure.
different other guys. But I believe that, flipping is fantastic to build your cash base, but the rental is where you can make long-term wealth and consistent wealth. The problem with the flip is once you sell it, you're not making money anymore. You got to
Right.
go find the next flip. The cool thing about a rental property, and I know we've kind of morphed out of the original question, but the cool thing about rental property is every single month, man, it's banking for you.
Right.
It's sending you money.
Right.
And you're appreciating, and you've got depreciation that you get to write off at the end of the year. And you've got all these other, basically on single families, you got 5 income streams, potential income streams from one single flip or one single rental property. So, I try to convince people when I want to flip, I'm like, hey, you need to also look at rental properties, but let me tell you how to do this. And then I just start sharing our model.
Cool. Awesome. Well, is there anything you think that we need to share that we haven't talked about?
I love this industry. I get up and, like I said, I get excited about this industry every day. I mean, I'm just like most military guys now. I was up at 4 this morning. I was sending a seller's disclosure. My client finished the seller's disclosure last night. I sent that to the buyer's agent this morning, looking at some other forms, talking, kind of planning out. We had some project stuff that we had one of our houses got inspected yesterday. We failed that. So I had to talk to the contractor last night and had to make sure that we've got a plan for today to fix all those tags. So I love this business. I encourage people to be in this business. I've got at one of the other houses here in Boyd, I've got about 4 or 5 of the local high school kids that come help. I paid them to do the demo.
Great.
And clean up. But I talk to them about, I don't just say I need this cleaned up. I actually walk them through why we're doing what we're doing. Here's what we got to do. We've got to do this to do this. So not only are they getting paid, but they're learning a little bit about remodeling a house. So it's just part of me. I have that servant's heart. So, and I certainly love youth. It's kind of how I got started in education, was youth groups. So
Great.
and sports. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Awesome.